The Libertarian State Leadership Alliance presents our 2017 National Conference, The Future of the Libertarian Political Movement. In this panel, I've been elected, now what? With Max Abramson, Joseph Stallcop, Caleb Q. Dyer, and Joshua Katz.
My name is Max Abramson. Thank you all for coming out. I'm not just a former state representative. I first got involved running unopposed as a member of my town's budget committee. I got elected constable. I got elected to the planning board. Right now I'm a current trustee of the trust funds in Seabrook. The bulk of the work that I've done as an elected official is as a state representative. My campaign was pretty simple. I ordered a bunch of signs that say, "I vote for Max's for less taxes." And I went around and I just campaigned on a very simple principle. Get money, power, and decision making back down to the local level and back to the people. And the Seabrook cop who I beat by more than 30 percentage points. So I think that worked. My campaign signs for state rep said, smaller government, local control. Max Abramson, smaller government, local control. What I did when I got elected is, of course, they always warn you, don't sponsor too many bills. So I sponsored 5 bills. I've tried to keep it down to 2, but you want to keep it down to no more than 2 or 3 on your first year, as little as possible, so you can learn the process. So I learned where the Office of Legislative Services are. I learned that's where they draft the bills. In the State House, we have 400 members, so we don't have staff members. So you take your idea down to the Office of Legislative Services. You have a strict deadline you've got to follow. You get the bill introduced, and then your bill ends up on the House calendar. I had 20 different bills in 2 years. I would say about 17 of those bills were more or less pure pro-liberty bills. They end up on the House calendar. They go to, you find your bills, they go to a committee, and you go and introduce your own bill at a committee at a table just like this. And there's a group of legislators sitting around. I don't know, how many people have been to the New Hampshire State House, by show of hands? You guys. And some of you have testified on bills. Well, as a state representative, you're just going in and introducing your own bill. Sometimes you're introducing somebody else's bill. And what do you do as an elected official? Your first year, it's just like a local office. You don't do anything your first year. You don't get anything accomplished your first year. I did get something accomplished. I got a House resolution asking the NOAA, Congress, and I think one other federal agency, National Marine Fisheries Service, to look into the situation affecting New Hampshire fishermen. We've gone on the seacoast in Seabrook, New Hampshire, we've gone from 100 fishing vessels in Hampton Harbor down to 9. We've lost all those jobs and businesses. And last year, even after we got this passed, and something did get done, we lost 1 more fishing boat, so we're now down to 8 fishing boats. What I do is I just protect, all I do, as far as I'm concerned. I believe voting and political action is just an act of self-defense. I'm just a constitutional conservative like Ron Paul. But I believe as a state representative, my job is just to protect my district from all the crazy stuff going on in Concord and in Washington, D.C. And literally, all I've done is just pure self-defense, protecting your rights, plain and simple. No big ideological stuff, left libertarian, right libertarian. I don't even get into that stuff. It's just strictly protecting the rights of the people back home, protecting their livelihoods from the stuff that's going on up there. That's literally all I do as a state representative. And so, of my 20 bills, I would say about 17 of them were just protecting people. I also co-sponsored about 50 different bills, and you get a lot more done with co-sponsoring. We got a lot of legislation passed last session for bills that I had that were co-sponsored, and then we got even more bills passed where I testified in favor or signed a blue sheet in favor. New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, I don't know how many of you guys have seen these, but when we go to vote on the House floor, New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, we read, rate every bill, and when I see bills that are on this sheet, especially if someone has asked me to roll call, I'll stand up and say, roll call, and you need at least 10 members now to stand up in their seats to second that roll call in order to get a roll call. A roll call means all the state reps come back into the State House, and you have to hit the red or green button, and it gets on record. I had a few bills like, I guess we didn't roll call it, random steroid testing for police officers. And that got a lot of news coverage and controversy. I avoid controversy when I can, but boy, I had so many stories. One of the reasons I have something like 40% name recognition in the state is because the news media just keeps picking on my bills, bill after bill after bill, And I was in the news probably 2 or 3 times a week for 2 years straight. And it's one of the reasons I have, I guess when they price it out, it's like $5 or $10 million worth of name recognition. I have like 40% name recognition in the state. And so before I hand off the mic, I would just want to make one quick point. These are the nominating petitions, and it costs the National Libertarian Party, state party donors, volunteers, was it something like somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 to do all this work, plus hundreds and hundreds of man hours. My hope was we could get ballot access, keep ballot access every single year, and then the New Hampshire, we had lots of Massachusetts volunteers come up and others from New England. I wanted to have New Hampshire volunteers being able to go down there and help them with their ballot access, because Massachusetts ballot access is worse. We need over 6,000 signatures to get 1,500 good ones in each congressional district, or 4%. I was not aware that I'd broken a record nationwide. By the way, I was a Libertarian candidate for governor, and at 4.3%, that turned out to be the highest percentage for any gubernatorial candidate for any third party in the country for 2016. And we were able to get ballot access for the whole state of New Hampshire for the first time in over 20 years. So we're now officially a party. By the way, everybody go to your town clerk's office and register as a Libertarian voter. And you can vote in. There will be an actual September primary. The only reason I was able to do that is it was a perfect storm. We had 2 establishment candidates running. There was a big anti-establishment push from the Trump campaign. Some of the Bernie Sanders folks showed up. A lot of the Frank Edelblue people voted, said they were going to vote for me. A lot of Steve Martian people, when Steve Martian didn't win on the Democrat side, they said they were going to vote for me. So I got a lot of broad-based support. It was a perfect storm year. And again, I have very, very high name recognition. It was very, very well known. And was on the campaign, trail 2 to 3 times a week on talk radio, Libertarian talk radio, conservative talk radio. Spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on advertising, social media advertising, Free Talk Live, everything that I could possibly do to get as much name recognition. And we had close to 400 signs up all around the state. And thanks to all the volunteers who helped out. But that's what it takes to get over 4%. All the other candidates, Robert Lombardo in Congressional District 2, Brian Chabot, who ran for Senate, they all eked out almost exactly 2%. So 4.3% was, of course, a record for New Hampshire, although we did get 4.5% back in 1996 with Ken Blevins. He spent a ton of money. But like I say, it's $30,000 to $40,000. I'm pretty convinced we're going to lose ballot access in 2018. It's just my guess. And, well, you can disagree, but I helped Robert Lombardo's campaign. We campaigned hard. We did a lot of doorbelling, a lot of sign waves, and he only won 2% of the vote. And I feel like, I really think, unless we get our act in gear, we're going to lose it in 2018, and that means that in 2020, we're going to have to do the same thing again. And finally, I have a handout on all your tables. It's Blue Ocean Strategy. This is literally what every classical, as far as I know, every classical liberal party in the Western world does. There's always a conservative party that focuses on socially conservative areas. They always go for Deep South, Bible Belt, rural areas, older areas. And then there's a classical liberal or libertarian-leaning party in every Western country, and they focus on urban areas, college towns. And if you look at this map from the Mark Wicks campaign, special election that happened a couple of days ago, Mark Wicks only won 5.8% of the vote. But if you look down here at the 18 to 29-year-olds, he won 21% of the vote. He won almost as many votes as the Republican among that age group. So the Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian each won over 20% of the vote. So among 18 to 30-year-olds, we're holding our own. I got 8% of the vote among people under age 55 in New Hampshire, and almost nothing among older voters. And that's been pretty consistent everywhere. And at the same time, they did a mock poll among high school students. I won 11% of the vote. Among some high schools, I won 16 or 17% of the vote, and that's on an $800 campaign. So where we need to reach out is really, really focus our efforts the same way other classical liberal parties have done. College towns, younger areas, urban areas, Northeast, the West Coast. Keene, I did almost 6% of the vote in 4 out of 5 wards there. I did really, really well where there were colleges there, where there were young people, recent high school grads. and all of our Libertarian candidates are doing well there. So please look at this. There's a ton of research that went into this. These are all successful, personal freedom parties. Every other country has them. Some only have a handful of MPs. Some of them have, 30, 40, 50, 60 MPs, members of parliament, who are part of the broader, smaller government coalition. And that's how they keep smaller government balanced budgets in those countries. That's how they keep their economies from going into a recession.
Hello, I'm Joseph Stallcop. I'm a state representative for Cheshire 4. I think one of the valuable things to bring up, especially after being elected, is media presence. Coming into this as someone who originally ran as a Democrat until a moral choice has caused me to switch over to the Libertarian Party. As part of the two parties, your media coverage outside of the higher offices, of course, governors, stuff like that, is going to be relatively low. When you go to third party, they will suddenly start coming up to you and flooding you with questions that they would never have asked any of the other two parties. So it's valuable to know a couple things. First off, know where the spin from the media source is coming. I know some people are like, oh, well, it's not as bad as you think it is. It is worse. One of the things valuable to bring up is that we had put out a press release for me switching, and within, you'd say about 20 minutes?
It was probably an hour or so, but yeah.
Within it, at least an hour and a half, people in the State House had already known about it. And we had gotten information that a top Democratic organizer had leaked it to someone else. So both parties have people in the media. Know who you're dealing with when you give out information. And I say the most valuable thing you can do is have your full reasoning and have your ideas, especially if you're running, when you win, and when you work on bills. Have all of that stuff down in writing and prepare yourself, because a lot of times they will put a story out on you that I won't say they will lie, but I'll say is they'll keep certain pieces of information out and only put in enough stuff to make you look bad, which they have done once to me. And the best way to combat that is write letters to the editor. Immediately after a story gets put out that you think is showing you in an unfair light, put down your actual words, because at the end of the day, they're talking about you, and who knows you better than yourself. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for your public image. I think that's another valuable thing, as we've seen this year with two representatives in particular. You are representing the public, which means try to have some civility, have decent behavior enough, be courteous, and try not to go off the rails with your comments on things. Just be kind to other people, and watch what you say, because I'll tell you hands down, especially with third parties, you already have the stigma of being a fringe group, so anything they can pull out of context, or even just pull out, in the case of some people that write stuff that's pretty out there, they're going to do. So watch what you say, be careful, and hopefully you should have a good time.
All right. Well, so my name is Caleb Dyer. I am a state representative for Hillsborough 37, which encompasses the towns of Hudson and Pelham, which is not too far south of here. I'm formerly a Republican. On February the 9th, I switched to the Libertarian Party. Oh yeah, thanks. But anyhow, so upon getting the job, which came by the general election in 2016, and then taking office on December 7th, you tend to know very little. That's why they have an orientation that you go to, where Max got a nice green bag. So in the orientation, like Max said, they tell you to file very few bills, which has its upsides and downsides. You learn by filing just a couple of bills, because you are coming in green, not knowing a whole hell of a lot. Yeah, always file one though. Don't file no bills. Oh my God, there are some people who tell you to file no bills and they're just the most insufferable people because they just don't want you to do your job. And so I filed one bill. I filed a bill relative to police body cameras. So it was not a full mandate. It was a partial mandate, which would have made it so that only police with sustained complaints against them would have been required to wear a body camera. Now, the police unions, of course, ended up opposing the bill. The state police ended up opposing the bill, even though it would have retained a lot of local control in terms of the towns actually deciding whether or not they wanted to adopt the policy in full. Currently, there are a couple towns in New Hampshire that have police body camera provisions so that every police officer is required to wear a body camera. The town of Ware is especially notable, seeing as they did it very recently. So this was kind of a foot in the door, and I actually, within the bill, I had a payment mechanism. So I actually had a way within the bill to pay for it. I raised the the penalty assessment on civil fines by like 2 and a fraction %. I forget exactly what I had kind of settled on, but it only raised roughly $250,000 in additional revenues on top of everything else, or that's the estimate that it would have been. And that would have paid just for the body cameras and the support costs to, you know, basically hold the information. And when I went into committee, Criminal Justice and Public Safety, to introduce the bill, before I actually even walked into the committee room, the deputy whip for the Republican Party was standing outside of the door, and he said, "Are you Representative Dyer?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Is this House Bill 643? Is this your bill?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he said, "Oh, so you're here to introduce it today?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Oh, well, I'm just here to inform you that the Republican Party has taken a position against your bill." And, you know, he had, just before he was speaking to me, he had spoken with the chairman of the committee. He had spoken with the clerk of the committee, who's of the other party, and he had informed them that the Republican Party had taken that position against it. And he signed the blue sheet as the deputy whip for the Republican Party against the bill. That is basically marking a bill as dead on arrival. If you are the party in control of the House and you say we oppose a bill, you're telling the chairman you don't pass this bill, and if you do, we're going to be pretty mad. So unfortunately, the Republicans and the Democrats sided against me on that bill. They did not believe that it was worthy of continuing on, so they gave it a recommendation of inexpedient to legislate. And that happened more than just that one time. So I was a co-sponsor on 4 other bills. Out of those 5 bills in general, 4 out of those 5 were marked dead on arrival in committee. And that's kind of when I realized that perhaps the switch to the LP wasn't such a bad decision, because then I could hedge my political capital to perhaps actually, you know, talk to both Democrats and Republicans and say, hey, where are you on this issue, and can I move you to my side? You know, and I thought that, you know, it would just be a better way to do it. In terms of the actual logistics of being a rep, in New Hampshire it's a little bit different. It's a part-time job here. So you are expected to go up in the beginning at least once a week to go vote. That's the general session day that you go in, you know, you press the shiny green and red buttons, and you vote. The rest of the time, so the rest of the week is committee meetings. It is, you know, sometimes private meetings with members of either the other House of the Legislature. So I've had several private meetings with senators to get their position hopefully changed on certain things, and that's been very successful. Namely, there's actually a bill that Chairman Perry and I disagree on, Senate Bill 114. He wants me to take it off of the consent calendar. It's a bill that would prohibit candidates in New Hampshire from accepting the nomination of 2 parties. A little bit of legislative history about the state of New Hampshire: the only libertarians that have ever been elected in the state have been fusion candidates. Yeah, except for Steve Valancourt. He's the only exception to that rule. But every single other one has been a fusion candidate. Don Gorman was never elected as a pure libertarian. He was.
I'm pretty sure Don Gorman got 2 as Republican. Then he was so well known he could run as a libertarian. Basically, you have your party.
Yeah.
You have your party. Wait, sorry.
You have your party, a lot of people vote for the party. In New Hampshire, it's 2%. 2% will just vote straight for whatever Libertarian candidate there is. And then the rest is what you yourself go out and get on top of that through campaigning. With the Republican Party in some districts, it's so much that whoever is the Republican candidate automatically wins. My district leans slightly Republican, so I had to really camp because the guy I ran against was a well-known Seabrook cop. Brendan Kelly ran as a Libertarian in our district. He won 17% of the vote. He in a very expensive special election, over $10,000 from each side. Brendan Kelly won 24% of the vote in Hampton Falls, and everybody there I knew, all the conservatives at least, said, "Oh my gosh, if I'd only known that Brendan Kelly was going to do so well, would have turned out and voted." Well, like I say, why you have Blue Ocean strategy where we can take, the DNC head on, which is, like I say, what works everywhere else, take the DNC head on, then everybody turns out because, hey, here's a party that has a chance of beating the big city party bosses.
Well, anyhow, back to Senate Bill 114. I met with two senators on this. I met with Senator Daniels and I met with Senator Sanborn, both Republicans, and both had initially voted for the bill when it was in the Senate. So Darrell is in favor of the bill. It was proposed by Senator Feltz, a Democrat, to eliminate the possibility of being a fusion candidate, which means that, say, I run in Hillsborough 37 as a Libertarian, so I'm immediately in the Libertarian column, and they don't run enough Democrats. I can get the nomination of the Democratic Party with 35 write-in votes. That is an incredibly valuable asset for anyone who runs as third party, because you can just pick up all of the people who would otherwise vote Democrat to, just check off all the Democratic names and your name's on there. So Darrell and I disagree on this, but I managed to visit two senators and change not only their votes, but change their minds enough that they would go to the House Committee, House Election Law, and influence members of that committee. I got a almost unanimous ITL recommendation out of the House Election Law Committee to kill that bill. I'm very proud of that. Darrell just recently asked me to take it off consent calendar. He actually asked both of us to do it, which is not going to happen. But anyhow, things like that, little things can really make a difference. Just going to committees and testifying as a representative, even if you're not on the committee, even if, it's not a bill or subject matter that you're very in tune with, learn something about it, talk to the members of the committee, feel them out, try to change minds, change hearts. Actually filing bills, this is something. In New Hampshire, it is very different from other states in terms of filing bills. A lot of other states, you have a staff that is afforded to you in the cost of, just you holding that office. In New Hampshire, we don't have such a staff, as Max has pointed out. We have what's called an Office of Legislative Services, where you go and you consult a drafting attorney to help you write a bill, and that drafting attorney has a specialization in whatever subject matter. You file what is called a legislative service request, which is an LSR for short, which is basically a bill. They can take your legislative service request and change the language in that bill to basically whatever they want. You need to be pretty vigilant in terms of what they actually produce. Because if you're not very vigilant, you might end up with a bill that is not the intent that you wanted. In other states, that's a lot less, that doesn't happen nearly as much, simply because you are able to hire your own attorneys to draft legislation most of the time. And then you can consult attorneys at the State House. It's something that just pretty much doesn't happen in New Hampshire. Let's see, you talking about media and dealing with the media. So, especially being third party, you will be scrutinized. Absolutely, there is no question. And you need to learn how to deal with that scrutiny. In my case, I actually didn't have a lot of media coverage when I switched, and that was probably a good thing at the time, mainly because it was a snowstorm, so that kind of, I switched on the day of a snowstorm, probably one of the biggest ones, right at the beginning of February. So the media attention was very limited. Dealing with the media is a double-edged sword, because if they cover you and you say something that can even remotely be taken out of context, it just ruins you. I didn't say anything that really would have been taken out of context. I'm actually very proud of what I said that day. But nonetheless, you need to be very, very cognizant, because in the case of, Joseph's press release, I leaked some of the information about Joseph's, switching early to a reporter at the Union Leader. That reporter then, presumably, because he was the only person outside of regular libertarians who would have had this information, then leaked it to someone in the Democratic Party, someone somewhere. Now, the Union Leader is well known as a conservative newspaper, so why they are sharing information with top people in the Democrats, I don't know. But it kind of made me a point of scrutiny, because top Democrats in the House were coming up to me in the anteroom during session asking me, so I hear there's going to be a new Democrat who's going to be joining your caucus, or a new Libertarian, And, it's just not fun to get grilled by, members of, ranking members of committees from the opposite party, or one of the two opposite parties. And, it's just, dealing with the media is so crucial, because if you don't know how to, or if you don't have good press context, so if, in the case of this reporter that I gave this information early to, he wasn't someone who I had known for a long time, so I didn't know really his reputation as a journalist or what he was kind of all about. So I trusted him. I made that trust judgment to give him information early. It was a bad decision. So learn how to restrict the flow of your information to make it so that it's hard to take you out of context. It's easy for them to spread the message that you want spread in the most palatable language possible. Apart from that, I'm thinking of other things that come with being a state rep. Like I said, private meetings with legislators, going to committee meetings. There's something else I wanted to talk about, but actually I'll end it there, and I'll just hand it to Mr. Katz, because he does the municipal side of things now. So.
Thanks. So my experience was a bit different than what we've been talking about, because as Caleb mentioned, I'm on the municipal side, not the state house. Also because I never had a moment of, I'm elected, now what do I do? For the simple reason that my first office I was appointed to fill a vacancy. And then when I won my second office in the election, well, I had been elected before, so I knew what to do. I was appointed first to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then was elected the following November to the Planning Commission in Westbrook, Connecticut. I think my favorite story from my 3 years on the Planning Commission was when a blight ordinance was introduced. And Connecticut has a bit of a problem, you might be familiar with eminent domain abuse. You might have heard of 1 or 2 cases out of Connecticut on this topic. And blight ordinances make it incredibly easy to abuse eminent domain. And that's in addition to what they do ordinarily, which is say, if we subjectively, and we meaning the way this bill is written, any of your neighbors who can be anonymous if they want, don't like the way you maintain your property, which could mean the things we usually picture when we picture blight, or it could mean we don't like that you have a car up on jacks that you're repairing on your driveway. And again, anonymous report, it could mean I don't like you. It goes to a town hearing officer, one person, and if it's declared blighted, you're fined $250 a day, and the town, after 10 days, has discretion to come onto your property and repair the so-called blight, and then bill you for it. Westbrook has a fair number of summer residents. So imagine the bill that that can be run up if you're not there when the complaint is filed. You're not present to defend yourself. The only appeal system is to go to court, which is going to cost you more than the $250 a day would have cost in the first place. You run up the bill for who knows how long. Then they come in and say, repair a wall, paint your house, tow away a car, and bill you. whatever it is they did. Maybe they pull away a mattress on your front lawn. Which I know that there was a person here in New Hampshire who had a blight issue with a mattress on his front lawn that he was throwing out. I believe he ended up going to jail eventually. They thought that, didn't they?
I don't know.
Oh, this was it was the guy from what's the radio show?
Oh, yeah.
It was a couch.
It was I'm sorry, Couch.
You know,
much-
the houses
much
are like
worse.
300K in the neighborhood, they're kind of nice, it's a kind of nice neighborhood. I can see the other side. Even though I'm a libertarian, I wouldn't use force.
So this bill was proposed, I'm sorry, this ordinance was proposed, and I don't know how familiar you are with Connecticut town meeting government, but it was proposed by an ad hoc committee of citizens. When it came to us, the initial informal feeling was 4-1 in favor. And the reason for that was not that my colleagues hate freedom, which is typically how libertarians cognize the situation, but that's not what it was. It's not that they thought it was a Great Britain bill either. What is that? What's happening? Is there a high-pitched noise? Am I the only, is that my ear? Well, we'll have to deal with that.
Talk loud.
I will. So, it's not because they hate freedom. It's not because they thought the bill was great. They could all see the problems with the way the bill was written. It's because their general impression was, well, they wrote it. It would be rude not to pass it. They took all this time working on this thing. We can't just throw it out. It's just not nice. Plus, it would never have come to us if it was a bad idea. Right? Nobody would ever suggest it to us because they've thought about it. And we don't have time to think about it. So we'll pass. By the time we left that meeting, the vote was 5-0 against. And we killed that ordinance. So what do you have to do to kill an ordinance like that? Well, first, you can't come in on your first day swinging. You have to come in with the assumption, which, by the way, in my experience, usually proves correct, that everyone is there because they believe fervently that they are serving their community, that they are doing the right thing, just the way you believe that. That's why you ran for office. Now, is it true? It's almost always true at the municipal level. You're going to disagree very strongly about what makes your community better or how to make it better. But you're dealing with people who legitimately, most of the time, 99% of the time, want to make their town better. And I differentiate just the 99 to 1 for one reason, which is most municipal officials are people who are only interested in their community and serving their community. Some use it as a stepping stone to higher office. So with them, you can make less assumptions. But you know what? It's still a safe assumption to make, because if you deal with someone respectfully on the assumption that they're there to make the town better, and that if you tell them why you think your way is better, they'll listen. You're going to make more headway if you're right. If you're wrong, you're still not going to make them that mad. Whereas if you assume they're never going to listen to you and you don't bother talking to them, and you say, I'm just going to fight you. I'm here to fight you. I'm against you from day one. You propose that we pay our secretary the amount we already agreed to pay her. I'm going to vote no. You propose we buy pens for the office. I vote no. Well, then who's going to listen to you when you say, I'm going to vote no on this blight ordinance? Well, you vote no on everything. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. Your no has lost its significance. If you walk in from the first day and you try to be friends and you try to say, listen, I understand that we don't agree on how to do things, but I believe we're all here to make this town better. I really believe that. People respect you when you finally stand up and say, this bill is an outrage. They say, oh, maybe it's an outrage. Whereas if you say everything's an outrage, they say, he always says it's an outrage. So that's important. Letting them know that you're there, just like them, to serve the community, not there just to serve your ideological preferences. So I won the vote with 67%. I very easily could say, I've got a stronger ideological mandate than anyone on here, especially the chairperson, who, by the way, won her election with 40%. You might notice that's not a majority. But we had minority party representation laws that protected Democrats, so she won anyway. It was a very strongly Republican town. My commission was actually the only commission that was not majority Republican, and it was tied 2-2 and 1. Every other commission and the city council were Republican up to the limits of the state minority party law. So I could have very easily made the case, I'm the only person on here with an ideological mandate. I've got the strongest. I won my election with the highest percentage of anyone on this commission. And I would have lost every single vote. Now, I could have walked away saying, that was a great 3 years. I voted no on so many things. I'm like Dr. No. But I wouldn't have reduced the size and scope of government. I wouldn't have even stopped it from growing. I just would have gotten a reputation for that guy who doesn't think about the citizens. Whereas, when you work to be a good colleague, and then a proposal comes in, from the Democrats to ban, you know the recycling bins you see in parking lots, the big boxes that you put clothing and books into? So they wanted to ban those. They thought they were ugly. So they wanted to tell private property owners, you can't put this thing on your private property. And there were a few in town that they were going to mandate that they be taken away. When you're a colleague, a trusted colleague, someone that they respect, and you say to them, who is this helping? How is this helping your Democratic constituents? Don't your Democratic constituents believe you're going to be pro-charity? And don't your Republican constituents believe that you're going to be pro-voluntary charity? They listen. But the other thing you need, besides being a good colleague, is you need good parliamentary procedure. You need to know how to get, when it does come to a fight, when it does come to something that you're willing to stand on, it's important. You need to know how to do it. So I was lucky. I was already a member of the National Association of Parliamentarians before I ran. I later became a registered parliamentarian. I've been studying parliamentary procedure for quite a while. I studied up on the rules specific to this commission. Its bylaws, its rules of order, which were different, to say the least, from Robert's. I would say not so good, but you know how to do things there. And that was a big part of how I switched that vote from being 4-1 against me to being 5-1 in my favor. What I did was, early on, made a motion to postpone indefinitely, knowing it would fail, but believing it would show that I've convinced at least one person to vote with me. So then people see, oh, you know what? It's not just a crazy libertarian. Somebody else also voted with me. Maybe I can do that too. It opened people's eyes. If I didn't know parliamentary procedure, I would not have thought to do this. Another thing, get to know not just your colleagues, but people who can help you outside of your commission. And build those relationships early on so that when you need the help, it's there. Get to know accountants, doctors, parliamentarians, lawyers, people who are willing to give you advice. If you ever find yourself elected, expectedly or unexpectedly, to a commission, and you'd like parliamentary advice, please contact me. I'm always willing to help. I contacted Aaron Starr, who's an accountant, on several financial issues. On this land use issue too, because he was able to help me figure out some of the parliamentary questions. Find people who can help you on the outside. Find ways, if you have to use popular support to pressure your colleagues. Now, don't do it all the time because they don't like that. But when it comes to those important bills, have your media channels ready so that you can go directly to the people and say, here's what I want to do. Here's what they want to do. Even the non-career politician will respond to that. The person I defeated, the incumbent, had been in for several terms. She was not a career politician. She was a retiree who liked serving on the planning commission. I didn't like the way she voted. But she certainly wanted to be reelected. Even non-career politicians worry about reelection. We started voting along party lines, like October, November. Everyone would start voting on every issue on party lines. The rest of the year, everyone was all over the place. But when the elections were coming up, everyone remembered, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Libertarian. and they started voting that way. So think about when you introduce your motions as well. Think about whether you want people to be voting along party lines or not. In municipal government, I think that pattern generally holds, that people become more party line as elections approach and less party line the rest of the time. Think about creative ways of getting the things you need done. Reaching out to, if you're on a commission like I was, where it's 2 to 1, get to know both town chairmen of the other parties and say, you know, we really need a no vote. We really need 2 no votes on this issue. How do we get that done? 99% of the time, if I said that, they told me something I was already going to do anyway. I need you to vote yes on this. Well, I was going to vote yes on that. Well, there you go. I don't tell them. I say, oh, that's hard, that's rough. You want me to give a guy a permit to run a business the way he sees fit? I don't know if I can do that, but okay, I'll do it. And be ready to deal with errant silliness. We had a proposal come in. This guy wanted to do some landscaping at his business. And he actually was showing us all these pictures of the plants he wanted to put in. I don't care. I was going to vote yes anyway. He had a whole line of spruce trees, though. And one commissioner raises his hand and says, I don't like this. Well, why not? Because there's no evergreens.
What?
And we all look at him and we say, what do you mean? And he goes, what? We say, spruce is an evergreen. And as a libertarian, this really makes me mad. Because I say, why should this guy, who has no clue what he's talking about, get to sit in judgment of what somebody else does with their property, who knows what they're talking about? And occasionally I drop things like this during hearings. So if somebody was really getting hit hard during a hearing, I would just raise my hand and I would say, is it true that you own the property? And they would say, yes. And I would say, well, then I'm going to vote yes. Let's move on.
Oh my God, common sense.
And get to know the values of the people you're serving with so that you can find ways to work with or around or against those values. So in my case, the overriding value, and this affected the recycling, it also affected the blight issue, was we want a New England feel. That's what we care about. Well, that meant that if I came in and I wanted something done, I had to say, here's how it will make us feel more New England. And if it wasn't going to make us feel more New England, I had to find a way around that. Although I did once threaten to vote no on a permit because this guy was so accommodating. He came in and he was doing all these things to say, we know you like it like this, we know you like that. And I said, you know, I was going to vote yes, but I don't like the way you're groveling. It's really making me angry. I voted yes anyway, but it was like a whipped dog. It was not a good scene. They turned down an apartment building for the disabled because it didn't look right. It was resubmitted. When they resubmitted, what they did was they put a back hallway and then had apartments popped it off that looked like little cottages, and they put bushes between them so you couldn't see the back hallway. So it looked like a bunch of cottages in the past. These types of things. These are the types of things in land use issues. What you're trying to do is make a vibrant town. By the way, I learned it really matters who you're speaking to. You can say the same things in very different ways. So when I spoke to conservatives, I spoke about free markets. And we just want to let business people do what they want with their property. When I spoke to Democrats, I spoke about we don't want established interests telling people what they can do with their property. Because that was a huge issue. You know, I spoke to one voter on the campaign trail who said, you know, I'm really mad at the town because I wanted to build a nail salon and they didn't let me. So I built it the next town over. And I said, well, we don't like losing that tax revenue, so let me see why. Go back and look at the minutes. Well, there was this big salon, a big spa in town, and they came and testified. And they said, well, you made us put in this big sewer line, so you should make her put in the same thing. They had 50 technicians, she had 1. So treating the unlike alike is not always fair. So this was a big established interest, just not wanting competition, and they got it at the expense of the town, at the expense of the people of town who want businesses to too frequent, at the expense of town revenue, at the expense of anything you could imagine as being a value for town government. But nobody wanted to piss off a big business. Democrats respond to that. Yes,
Oh, I wanted to follow up on the pro-business versus pro-market.
I was just about to wrap up, so sounds good to me. So, in short, know your parliamentary procedure, don't assume everyone is evil, and work with your colleagues. Understand, the way you're going to get things done is by finding a compromise that best suits your values, that gets what you want, that gets done what you want, without making everyone else against you, because if it does that, they're going to vote no.
As I was saying before, there's always a classical liberal party in every Western country, except for the US. Here it's the Libertarian Party. But they always operate as political parties. One of the things that the FDP in Germany did, it was a huge mistake. They had always, until the 1970s, they were the majority party. And even into the 1990s, they always stood by, we're pro-market, we're pro-principle. We're not pro-business, we want to keep a healthy business environment. But we're pro-market. We have to stand by, when you're on the right as a worker and you have a dispute, we're not going to be George Bush. George Bush's National Labor Relations Board sided with the company 90% of the time. They pushed through corporate bailouts, Wall Street bailouts. We have $92 billion a year in corporate welfare spending. There's the Export-Import Bank and so forth. So the FDP said, we're not going to go that route. We're going to be pro-market. And you'd be surprised how many social democrats come over and support the FDP, how many liberals will support pro-market over pro-business, especially socialists, closet, people want to tear down the employer class. We're going to stick with principle. The FDP, a few years ago in the last election cycle, started giving the impression that they're very much tied in with the business community. They lost not only the support from the left, but from blue-collar conservatives also. And they're down to 8? I guess I don't have it on those. Yes, I do. They're down to 10 MPs. In the 1970s, they had grown to the size, for most of the post-war boom, right up to the 1970s, they were the majority party. They didn't even have a coalition with anyone else. So always, always, always stick to principle every single time, and don't give the appearance that you're siding with unions or companies or someone else. Don't even give the appearance. And don't push through the model legislation. They pushed through, before these guys' term, the banks came by and pushed through model legislation. They totally rewrote all our banking laws. And they came in, they had their lawyers rewrite all our laws and come in. And I said, this doesn't sound right. And I went and did the work on my own, and I went through this, and I made sure that they weren't changing all the laws around, and that it was many, 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 many pages to go through. To do that extra work, you'll be surprised how many liberal voters you'll get by sticking to pro-market, not pro-business, we're pro-market. So when they come up with, ALEC comes up with legislation, I read every single bill that I ever voted to pass, every single one, unless it was on the consent calendar. Consent calendar is stuff that just goes right through. We have a little box in front of us as state reps when we're on the floor of the House, and there's a white button that says we're present, there's a red button for no, and there's a green, red, yes button that says we're voting with the committee's recommendation, or whatever the motion on the floor is. I wore out my no button. I had to go to the House clerk and say, my red no button doesn't work anymore. I was having to keep going like this all day. Very next session, sure enough, I came back to my seat, and there was a brand new shiny red no button. I'd worn my no button out. And in the previous panel, they brought up what I call the Goldilocks zone. How much should we water down our message? There's always that question. Well, we always say we're the Libertarian Party. So we're a party, so we get some people elected, but how many? How much do you water down your message? And how much do you water down your principles? And I say, don't water down your message, don't water down your principles at all. What we're selling, though, is we're not selling, when you sell boxes of cereal on the store shelves, we're not selling the list of ingredients. People want something a little bit sweet. So I describe the Republican Party as like a box of bland, not even Cheerios, they're like the generic Tostios. They're the cheapest thing you can get that's, it does the job. People want something a little sweet. What the Democrats are offering is wacko Fruit Loops. And it's true. I mean, everybody warned me, it's sweet, so most people buy the Fruit Loops until they get too much sugar and they feel sick. There's all the preservatives and artificial colorings. It's actually bad for you. Every time the Democrats in the last 50 years have won the majority in Congress, Every single time there's been an economic downturn, there's been a loss of jobs, or there's been a recession. Every single time. So what the Liberal Democrats do in, UK, they have 57 seats in the House. They actually have a higher percentage in the state Senate, in the House of Lords, I should say. The Liberal Democrats is a merger between the Social Democrats, kind of like the Green Party, and the classical liberals who merged together, and they found that with that overlap, they were able to get dramatically more votes. And their selling point is, yeah, we defend civil liberties and your constitutional rights and personal freedom from the Conservative Party, the Tories, but we also prevent labor from wrecking the economy with reckless debt, anti-business policies, cronyism, picking winners and losers. So we fit in the middle. So people who live in the cities, the conservatives who live in the cities, and business owners and taxpayers, they vote for the Lib Dems. They vote for our counterpart there. They're kind of a pragmatic, soft libertarian, maybe even left libertarian. They keep tuition costs down, they keep your taxes down. All these classical liberal parties all over the world have selling points. And basically what they do on economics is keep to a balanced budget, like the conservatives. They keep government down, they reduce middle class taxes a little bit. Their main thing, though, is to protect your rights, to protect your freedom, they protect your civil liberties all the time. They stick to principle all the time. And when business comes in and they say, we want to cram this model legislation through, that sets progressives off. And then the classical liberal party steps in, and they're usually in the center. They say, well, we're not going to allow that. We're going to vote this down. We're going to vote down the TPP, NAFTA, GATT, because that's not free trade, that's managed trade. And it's geared towards helping these big companies at the expense of the workers and consumers. So, again, I've been saying this for years, but other people have been saying this longer than I have. The selling point, the message, we have to find districts, especially younger districts. If you look at this, over 20% of the vote among under 30-year-olds. We've all done the same thing, we've all seen the same thing. Third parties do really well in younger districts. And especially when there's no representation, blue-collar, working-class districts, mixed-race districts, cosmopolitan districts, that's where we're doing the best. Right there, over 20%. That's enough to win in those districts. And to go to conservative voters and say, look, we never get conservative Republicans elected from this city, but we could get libertarians elected, and at least we save you money on taxes, school choice, all the good stuff. And that's really why we need to kind of dig in, put our limited resources there. We have to get libertarians elected as libertarians, and don't talk about the end goal, how small a government do you want. We just talk about, what do the Republicans say? They just say, less government, more freedom. They got that from us. Literally the words, less government, more freedom. They also stole, in what was it, the late 1990s, the party of principle. They stole that from us, so we had to change our motto to the real party of principle. They then stole that and changed their name to the real party of principle. And I think block grants, line item veto, term limits, balanced budget amendment, school choice, almost everything that they've come up with that wins them votes in the inner suburbs, those are our ideas. In the 1990s, when Republicans, the Contract with America group were talking about, that Contract with America was our idea. It was a libertarian idea. The Republicans finally won in the inner suburbs. They won among working poor, which they never win. They barely won among 18 to 30-year-olds, campaigning like libertarians, using our messaging and our marketing. They even said 50 different solutions for 50 different states on drug policy, which has been libertarians since 1972. Now, they never did pick up on, same-sex marriage and LGBT rights and some of the others, because that would turn away some of the religious social conservatives. Nevertheless, when the Republicans have campaigned like libertarians, again, the last elected president to use the word libertarian in a positive light before he got elected was Ronald Reagan. He said that in a national interview, and he said, I describe my views as much more libertarian than anything else. And he got elected. He won 45% of the vote in New York City. Mitt Romney, wishy-washy moderate, won 16%. The last mayoral candidate, Republican candidate from Yale, won 16% of the vote. Ronald Reagan won 40 or 45% of the gay vote. George Bush Jr., who ran, kind of sounded a little bit like a Federalist libertarian, used some libertarian leanings and wordings. He won, 40 or 45% of the Arab American vote. By 2004, when the Republican Party had switched to kind of this ultra-right-wing nationalist, build a wall, get these people out of here type of thing, 2%. 2% of Arab Americans So they've gone from, now that's 3.5 million Americans, went from being split between the two parties to 2%. That's pretty severe. You couldn't find an Arab American in 2004 who was going to vote straight Republican ticket. Those are, we find in the center of Manchester, where I did best, center of Nashua, where I did best, Keene, parts of Portsmouth, southern Portsmouth, Dover, Durham's college town, all these college wards, that's where we hold the highest, not just my race, everyone, all third-party candidates, all the Libertarian candidates. And so, like I say, we don't have a lot of money. We're at risk of spending another $30,000 to $40,000 just getting on the ballot in 2020 again. So there's a real chance that that could happen. Even if we campaign hard, it's really hard to get over 4%. Really hard. It was 5 straight months of work, and that was starting with almost 40% name recognition in the state. It was a really hard campaign. So $30,000, if we could just back state house campaigns, we could probably get about 30 people, 30 state reps elected on $30,000.
Or actually, perhaps even more than that.
Honestly,
Support 60 campaigns and $500.
yeah, right, exactly. I spent less than $500 because, well, yeah, right, yeah, you spent $0. Well, other than the 2 to get on the ballot. I spent right around $420. You know, like, that is winnable at that rate. You know, I mean, honestly, if you spend more than $0, you have a good chance of winning if you just go out and knock doors. Oh, questions?
You were elected as a major party candidate.
I was, yes. I
Yes,
was.
there are, of course, many robots that simply vote for the major party.
You're right, especially in my district. There are a lot of registered Republicans that pretty much robotically vote Republican, but we still had a primary, which was 17 people for 11 seats. And I ran in that primary. All of my campaign materials didn't mention the word Republican, didn't mention the word conservative. In fact, the only thing that said anything at all about my ideological leanings was, it said, make a stand for liberty this year. And it was gold and blue. Where do you think I got that one from? You know, like, it was very clear that I was running a libertarian campaign. Like, my choice to switch to the Libertarian Party came mostly because I was pretty much actively discriminated against by the Republicans. But I've been a libertarian for years. So when I went and door knocked, I was basically campaigning as a libertarian. So those messages resonate. You know, there's no reason why you standing on principle and then you actually voting on principle is a problem. In fact, if anything, I've had a lot of positive reaction, a lot of feedback from that. So, you know, like Max says, don't be afraid to stand on principle.
I think now that you're in, yeah, I think you have some good shot. But if someone is starting from scratch, even if they spend a couple $1,000s, if they're not running as a major party, it's very, very hard. I've done it twice.
Oh, before I forget, if you guys go away, I want you to remember one thing.
This is the most important thing. If you believe in liberty, run for local office. It is by far the single most important, whether you run for legislature or do anything else or not. Get elected. You have no idea. I could lecture people for an hour about the importance of this. I threw my name in as the Libertarian candidate for president a few years ago just to go out throughout New England and talk about how important it is to run for local office. I've done it. I've known a lot of other people have done it. I've known we've got 150 Libertarians serving in local elective office right now. It is by far, you have no idea how important it is. Everybody is dismissive of it. It's all I do other than the state legislature. Get elected to cemetery trustee, library trustee, trustee of the trust funds. I'm trustee of the trust funds right now. Get elected to budget committee. Go in on the last day of filing period. Find the position nobody else wants. Run for that spot. Go on the first day of the filing period, file for something you want, like planning board, and then the last day, nobody filed for cemetery trustee. When you can show people that you save people $2,000 of their tax money on cemetery trustee, all the taxpayers start talking and say, hey, this guy loves saving people money on taxes. One of the things, another idea that unites all libertarian candidates everywhere, man, we love just going through that budget line item by line item and finding, oh, we can just make the small change to the impact fee ordinance, change it from a plan-based to a buy-in based, and get more money. Instead of buying a whole bunch of new equipment, use the money for recoupment to buy down the property tax rate, false alarm ordinances, cutting out the middleman, doing more work internally within the town, doing assessments within the town to save $200,000. I love that stuff. And when I'm on budget committee, I fight for that stuff. And my campaign signs for governor all say, you'll remember, A vote for Max is for less taxes. And when I got on the conservative talk radio, damn it, the first thing I talked about, you save you money on this and this and this. We don't need to spend $52 million building yet another women's prison. Harm reduction saves lives, but it also saves money. You know, my take on taxation is theft. Taxation is theft, but murder is worse. For me, what drives me is the loss of life from bad public policy. When I'm trying to sell harm reduction countries have cut the number of new HIV cases by 90%, but they also save taxpayers money. If you go to a conservative taxpayers group, first thing they're going to want to hear is about the money they're saving versus putting people in prison. Treatment, prevention, recovery support, needle exchange programs, harm reduction strategies save taxpayers a ton of money, billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Or in New Hampshire, hundreds of thousands of dollars versus building more and more prisons.
Max, you did a great job of coming down to our neck of the woods at Claremont when a policeman did an unwitnessed shooting of one of the mentally ill citizens there that was just a young man that was unemployed, despondent. He had previously called the police because he thought they were his buddies to kind of talk things over. And the last time the policeman shot him, but the policeman made the case that it was suicide type thing, and he had to shoot him. But we appreciate.
They reported afterwards, oh, that was a political campaign stop, and I said, no, it's nothing to do with it. I was explaining to people, police commissions and budget committees. You've got a budget committee in your town, run for budget committee. Most important position you can run for. And you can get into police issues, not personnel issues. You can get into police budgetary issues, start talking about dash cams and body cams. You can start talking about putting together a police commission. Hey, you're getting strangled? Do you need the Heimlich maneuver?
Time.
Yeah, it's time. Yeah, we've gone over actually right before we go.
Thank you guys, and I'd love to talk to you about the Claremont issue.
The Libertarian State Leadership Alliance presents